the intent or the purpose of doing that was to demonstrate the power of machine learning, power of AI, and how it will reshape our future of finance. So imagine a situation that finance wants to build a predictive analytics, right? That's a big buzzword, right? Now, imagine I build that based on the finance data that I have. And by building that, I ignore all of the marketing innovation data, all of the category insights data, all of the market uplift, the sales data. I will always have a half-baked forecast. The earlier phases of any digital transformation journey is to simplify your processes, remove the complexity, and automate your workflows. Only then you should go for machine learning. If you haven't done those, do not go for machine learning.
Hello and welcome to Tech for Finance, where we help finance professionals leverage technology to level up their lives. I'm your host, Adam Shilton, and in this episode, we're going to be chatting with Tariq Munir. Tarek is a finance thought leader with a passion for simplification and finding easier solutions for difficult problems. His breadth of experience spans supply chain finance, FP&A, integrated business planning, advanced analytics, financial reporting, commercial decision support, and finance transformation. Wow. Tarek is currently the head of finance for supply chain at PepsiCo in Sydney, Australia, where he leads a multi-geography team and serves as a strategic business partner. Before joining PepsiCo, Tarek worked at AkzoNobel as head of finance and at PwC in various audit and advisory roles. Originally from Pakistan, Tarek obtained his ACCA from the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Pakistan, and then later became a chartered accountant with the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand. Outside of work, Tarek loves to do oil paintings. We've not had that one before. Learn music and cook. But before we start, if you like what you hear today, please make sure to subscribe to Tech for Finance on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. But really appreciate you joining me today, Tarek. It's really good to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much, Adam, and the pleasure is all mine. And thank you for such a detailed and overwhelming, I would say, introduction. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm humbled to be on your podcast. Thank you so much.
No worries at all. So I mean, the oil paintings is a good one. Is that something you've been doing for a while?
Yeah, actually, last couple of years, I would say 4 or 5 years, I have just found out that it's kind of a hobby I have developed. It wasn't something I have been doing for a very long time, but yeah, I developed something very recently. In fact, these paintings just at the back, these are all painted by myself. So
amazing. So people watching on video will be able to see. But yeah, take some pictures after the session. I'll put them in the show notes, Tarek. I think people would love that. And then the music. Well, do you play?
So I do a bit of a classical music, like the Indo-Pakistan classical music. So yeah, still, I would say not something I would do on a podcast. Maybe later part of some. Just give it a little bit more time.
Yeah, but
not in this podcast for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm interested because I've got a bit of a music background myself, but more sort of rock.
That's nice.
Rock and heavy metal is my scene, I guess. But
that's really
a bit of a sidetrack there anyway. But over to you. So I keep up with a lot of the stuff that you're doing, Tarek, now, because obviously you've become more active on LinkedIn recently. I think you've been at PepsiCo coming up to, what is it, 11 years now, something like that?
Yeah, somewhere around that, yeah.
Somewhere like that. So I mean, obviously our listeners love the tech side of things, a load of finance professionals that are really interested in, how do I build my skills? How do I start thinking about technology? So looking at what you've been doing recently, and we'll jump straight into it. I hope you don't mind.
No, of course.
You've taken a real interest in the data science side of things. So looking at some of your recent qualifications, looking back to, I think it's 2020, which was the statistics of Python, machine learning, data visualization, and so on. And then I know you've got a more recent qualification as well on digital transformation. But that sort of stuff back in 2020, that was kind of before we've seen this recent AI explosion. So what kind of led to your interest in upskilling there, specifically in those areas?
So, a great question, Adam. So, George Westerman, he writes in one of his books, Leading Digital, that technology is the biggest story in business today, plain and simple, right? It is redefining the way we interact with our customers, how they are consuming our products, how do we redesign our processes around technology, and in turn, and hence we are reinventing the business models, right? Now, this impact of technology is similar. So finance is no different, right? When it comes to the impact of the technology. In fact, if hand on my heart, I firmly believe that finance is the central figure in all of this change. We are at the core of it. We are at the heart of this change. Hmm. Finance is a presumed data stewards. How many time it happened would have happened to you that any data in any part of the organization, something goes wrong. Oh, finance, let's talk to finance. They can fix it. Right? So we are at the helm of it, right? So we are at the center of it. And we know today that data is the most valuable resource. It's the new, right? So through this upskilling or through this certification, what prompted me to do that was actually I wanted to answer the biggest question I had in my mind. How could I use the data that we have available to drive a data-driven decision making and become a better strategic partner to the business, right? It all revolves around that. And when I moved into that space, my initial reason was not to get certified, start writing codes, or become a full-blown data scientist, right? That was never the intention, and that is still not the intent. I just wanted to be comfortable enough to speak the same language as more technically savvy people in the organization, have that seat on the table when the big decisions are being made around the digital transformation. How do we transform and how do we digitize and automate our ways of working? So I believe this helps you get that seat at the table, right? Then secondly, I wanted to be able to evaluate the technology, look at a solution, not just based on its hype or buzz. I wanted to evaluate based on its merits, right? I wanted to know what are the things out there that are available. Yes, I can code per se. I did write few codes as well as part of my capstone projects and then later on just as part of my own personal interest. But again, that was not the intention to write code. These days, you can actually, without even using a single line of code, you can create a whole app, right? However, getting back to the basics, understanding how things are working, how technology is reshaping our workforce, how it's impacting the business, that is what actually prompted me to go down that road, upskill myself. And to be honest, upskilling, I'm a big advocate of upskilling. You might have seen some of my posts on LinkedIn
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
I believe in continuous upskilling, whether it's technical, it's softer skill. I firmly believe that that is the only way finance can stay relevant in this ever changing landscape of technology. So hope that answers touches bit of your question.
Of course, and I think that's such a good way of looking at things. Just going back to your point there about I want to be able to evaluate technology based on its merits, not on the hype. And I think that is something that people need to take away straight away because there is a lot of hype now. Yeah, there's a
Exactly.
huge amount of hype with so many new platforms coming out. And as you say, people being able to develop applications without needing to write a line of code, right? I'm curious though, you said obviously you're not a full-blown developer, and doing these qualifications wasn't ever with the intention of, writing applications or doing any of that sort of stuff. But the stuff that you did write, what sort of stuff was it? I'm just curious.
So, when I did the data science certification, that was like around a 6 to 8 month certification from IBM. It was pretty intense, right? I mean, you actually learn a lot of machine learning and a lot of advanced coding kind of stuff, Python and stuff. So I was actually thinking, and that's where those curiosity comes into play, that what is it that I can use these different machine learning algorithms as one of the practical use cases in finance. So my initial capstone was more around the real estate landscape of Sydney. So that was not really finance related.
Mhm.
So I was really working on the back of my mind that how do I actually bring this into practice in the real world finance? So I used certain algorithms. I did some of the research, and then the good thing about internet today is that all you need to do is actually an internet connection,
Yeah.
and you can learn everything pretty much, right? So there are a lot of forums available out there where I could see some of the codes and some of the algorithms, which when I looked at those, it struck me that I can use those um to help finance functions do the uh, anomalous do the detection of anomalous transactions, right? So how we in our audit we do a conventional approach where we pick out a sample and then hope that in that sample somehow we will be able to pick one of the transactions which are an anomaly. However, this algorithm, what it did, I created a test data. So based on that test data, uh, it actually identified all those transactions which were anomalous, right? And which were not a routine transactions. So it flagged. So there were around, on top of my mind, I don't remember, but maybe around 10,000, 20,000 transactions that I put into the algorithm. And it gave me, say, 20 or 30 transactions, which looked bit off, right? Now, what a finance can do is, or those internal control managers or those finance leaders, what they can do is they can then just look at those 20 transactions and see how many of those are actually false positive or how many those are actual real anomalies. So this cut down the time, this cut down the efficiency, this removes that sampling bias, that population bias. If you scale these kind of algorithms, so this was just an example to demonstrate the power of algorithm and power of machine learning. If you scale it across the entire organization, that is creating transaction, that is creating gigabytes of transactions per day, you can imagine how much value it can generate.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. And it's an interesting project. And you're probably ahead of the curve because there's some tools now that are trying to build that in, some better than others, right? Um,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, the use case, obviously, definitely there. Why go wading through transactions when a machine learning algorithm can tell you what to watch out for? So from a time set
Exactly.
view, is amazing. And was that just a bit of Python connected to the algorithm with some rules? I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, right? But was that basically the foundation of how that was built?
Exactly. So it was all written in Python,
Mm.
right? And then there was a couple of algorithms that I used. Uh, main one being the k-nearest neighbor, uh, and uh, and then I used those to. Then I created bit of a test data to a population. In fact, I created bit of a population to test my algorithm to make sure that I'm getting the results that I'm trying to achieve. Um, and actually the algorithm is working. So it was more of a test case for me. It's actually the link is out there on my LinkedIn profile as well. On the featured section, if you scroll towards the right, you will find out the details of that algorithm that was quite a few years ago. But the again the intent or the purpose of doing that was to demonstrate the power of machine learning, power of AI, and how it will reshape our future of finance. Imagine this kind of an algorithm, you have that algorithm available or sitting on your system all the time, which is flagging you all the transactions which you need, which are not normal, which are non-routine transactions. Imagine how much time the reporting teams or the audit teams will save because they have that information available in real time. They don't need to do a quarterly testing, a yearly testing, and then, get all those kind of works done. So it's really a powerful tool, I must say.
Yeah, and I'll link in the show notes to that resource if you're happy for me to do so. So no, that'd be great. So
No, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Slightly different question then. And this
Mhm.
was in the list of topics, so we're going a bit off track here, but it's related.
No,
So
that's okay.
since you went through that exercise a few years ago, obviously that was pre ChatGPT large language models. So the question is, if you were to do that again now, do you think you'd be able to do it quicker? Is there anything that you do differently if you went through that exercise again with the tools that we now have available, do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think I would have just put in the chat GPT, what's the code that I need? And again, there can be two ways of looking at it. One was when I did my research on that. I mean, it took me quite a while. It took me a couple of weeks to actually come up with an algorithm, considering the fact that I'm not a coding expert, right, per se, right? I mean, I did learn the coding, but it wasn't never my intention or that level of interest. But the other way, so that actually helped me build a lot of expertise in that, right? So I gained a lot of knowledge through research and came to know about different ways. Actually, it gave me ideas as well that how different algorithms can be used in different situations in finance, right? So which was the intent, which was the actual reason for doing these kind of certifications and these kind of upskilling, that you know what are the algorithms there, what are the tools there that you can then apply to the real world scenarios. The other way of looking at the technology is that, of course, yes, I would have put that in chat GPT and it would have given me the code. Having said that, it would have still saved me the time to write the code, but how do I contextualize it in today's to my use case, to my scenario? That's where my role comes into play,
Mhm.
right? ChatGPT is, of course, a great way to get your base work done, save some of the time on the research part of it. But then you contextualize, you bring that humanistic aspect around what is the reason you are doing it, what are the underlying parameters that needs to be evaluated. How do you actually evaluate the result,
Mm.
right? So an algorithm can can tell you there are five transactions which are not correct, but then you need to evaluate that whether yes, there might be context to some of the transactions. So yes, algorithm identified it correctly, which is a good thing. But then yes, this is not something we will classify as an anomalous transaction or as a non-routine transaction.
Mm.
So yes, with ChatGPT, I would have definitely cut down my research time. But having said that, I do a lot of research on this topic, and recently since we're talking about the topic, so I haven't had a very, I would say, enlightening experience from using ChatGPT. So I did ask about, so for example, there were a number of studies on digital transformation, number of papers that have been published on digital transformation. And when I'm going in and trying to get some of the references from Chat GPT, generally those references do not work. So either the data is a bit outdated at the moment and or the links are updated, and they do say that it's only valid till 2021 mostly. Not a lot of data after 2021 is there, but still I found that a bit of a disconnect in that
Mm.
aspect. So yeah, over reliance should never be there. We should rely on those technologies. ChatGPT is a great technology, but then yes, definitely can cut down a lot of time, but still caution, proceed with caution.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the points that you mentioned there that's really valid is the, the certification that you got and the training, the qualification that you got gave you that grounding and that base knowledge of machine learning and
Mm,
the topics that you you covered. And I think that's so important because a lot of people think, and maybe there are some cases where you can actually do this without any foundational knowledge at all, because there's a theory to say, chat GPT, just give me the foundational knowledge. But that aside, I think there's a lot to be said for at least getting grounded in the
yeah,
subject before
true.
you then try and use chat GPT to speed it up. Because, and I have tried this, right? So I have tried getting chat GPT to write code and so on and so forth. but it's always been limited success because I don't understand the base language or the base concepts of that coding language.
Mm.
And you can tell ChatGPT to validate the code as many times as you like. But again, if it doesn't totally understand the context or the end goal of what you're trying to achieve, sometimes
True.
it's done. So you can get into a real rabbit hole, of frustration and endless time consumed to it because you think that this technology is going to be the answer to everything. But in fact, sometimes you need to take a step back and say, right, well, what base knowledge do I need to get the most out of the tool? And then how do I speed things up after that? So
Absolutely. You're spot on, Adam. And we need to treat all of this technology and embrace all of the technology. So I'm big on technology, right? I mean, that's why we're having this conversation.
yes.
But I do say that to myself that yes, ChatGPT and all these OpenAI large language models, these are great large language models. It's a great technology, right? But whenever we use it, we need to make sure that we are, as you rightly said, that we are grounded in our basics, right? If you want to, and there is nothing wrong in learning a new skill, right? There's nothing wrong in if you want to really absolutely go for coding, go for it. But then get some basic knowledge, get some basic understanding, and how do you actually apply that code in the real world. That's having that knowledge is very important. Having that context is very
Yeah. Yeah. So I suppose that's the key takeaway, isn't it? Don't go headlong into something that you've not got expertise in just because you think there's a shortcut to doing something. Do have a bit of a think about it first, right? So, but moving on a little bit, I guess. So I noticed that when you'd done some of the certifications in data visualization and that sort of stuff, that one of your next projects at PepsiCo was related to Power BI and visualization with Power BI. Now, of course, you don't need to go into the specifics. Obviously, it's sensitive information, right? But I'm curious to know, was that a direct result of the stuff that you did in 2020? Did that open your eyes to say, hang on, there's technologies that we need to be using? And then the second part of that question is, what sort of value did that project bring about for your team and the business, I guess?
Oh, great question, Adam. So yeah, I would say when I did my certification and I presented my capstone project and discussed my capstone project with my manager, with the CFO, the CIOs, etc., just to give them that and that just to demonstrate my passion,
Mhm.
right? That how much I am passionate about these kind of things and how much I'm upskilling myself. So that definitely helped me in getting in becoming a lead for a period of time for that project, right? And again, I was definitely considered because I had demonstrated that desire to learn and that desire to upskill and my passion for data science and advanced analytics. From a value addition point of view, again, this was quite a big project. It was not just the Power BI thing, but again, that really helped me um, put out in front of the broader organization how different ways data is flowing through the organization and how we can actually streamline and create dashboards and do some of the work related to advanced analytics. So again, when you upskill yourself and when you keep demonstrating how you want to take your career further and what are those areas which are really excites you, definitely the opportunities come into play, and you sometimes you get surprised that how opportunities come through your way in through 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 the avenues which you would least expect. So
Mm.
definitely this certification definitely helped me, and not just from the organization's point of view that they see you as someone who has the right skill set, who is upskilled, who is always ready to learn. It also helps you to apply your knowledge, right, in those projects and really develop you into a much more of a futuristic kind of a finance professional. So that's why I always I'm a big advocate of, as I mentioned earlier, a big advocate of upskilling, showcasing your technical skill set and your of course your software skill set also.
So
So yeah, that's I would say.
slightly different question then. So, and again, I'm focusing more now on the visualization and the analysis, I guess, and whether it's Power BI or whatever other tool. But the end game or the end result's the same, right? We want to be able to visualize. We want to be able to make more informed decisions. I'm always curious because I've run data projects in the past, and I've seen firsthand how in visualizing data in different ways, you spot stuff that you didn't necessarily notice before. So as a result of that project or any other project that you've run, have there been any interesting trends or any interesting stats, KPIs, and anything that you didn't necessarily expect to see from being able to visualize data better at the end of the project compared to working in spreadsheets before, for example?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In a number of instances, not just this project, but throughout my career, I have done number of different automation projects.
Mhm.
So where we did eventually notice a number of um, insights, I would say, which were very different to what our expectation was or what our perception was. Things like profitability of products or even there was one project that I looked after, which was around the consolidation of the financials. So when we did the consolidation, when we moved our consolidation to the cloud, I did realize that, there are number of different insights that I was not looking at. There were number of different um, information that I was probably missing out because things were in Excel, and you put something in Excel, and next year when you open the Excel file, you have forgotten all about it. And someone just goes in and change something and everything else changes. So that masked a number of different insights into those financials, which technology helped me unlock. So again, technology unlocks so much for you from a data visualization perspective. And it's all about enabling the data driven decision making, right? It's making sure that we have the right data structures in place, right tools in place, right technologies in place in order to drive that decision making.
And it's interesting, isn't it? And you gave a couple of examples there. So product profitability, right? And that's in some instances where we end up with a gut feel in some instances, don't we? So we work in a certain way, we see the numbers coming through, and we don't necessarily see the whole picture. But because we've got a grounding in the business, we know how things work. We kind of build up this internal dialogue and this communication that says, "Oh well, we assume this to be the case." But it's only when you then get the data and the ability to pull it into context and visualize it that sometimes that gut feel that we've always had, you have to challenge it. And sometimes it's a bit scary, isn't it? Where you think, hang on a second, have we been doing, not necessarily doing things wrong, but have we really missed that for the past however many years? And it's interesting to see. And then the second piece there that you mentioned was, I mean, you mentioned consolidations. Obviously, you're taking data from multiple areas and you're rolling it into a single view, right? And I'm trying to think of an analogy. I mean, the Lego bricks analogy has been used a million times, right?
Yeah.
Lego bricks scattered over a table doesn't really say anything. Whereas if you build them into a house, obviously, it paints a much better picture. But, whether it's, if we imagine what one data area is bricks, for example, and then another data area could be, cement, and another area could be tiles, right? If we're looking at those areas separately, we only get an impression of the dimensions of the bricks, the materials of the bricks, or
Mm.
whatever. But then putting them all together, you can then really start building, well, what does it look like when all of these things work together? And I think it sounds really simple, but it's not, because A, you've got to get the data
Different.
in the right format in the first place.
Yeah.
And B, you've kind of got to look at that and maybe you can speak to this a little bit as well. Sometimes people are guilty of just looking at data in the areas that they know about, and they don't necessarily think about the data that they don't have. So we generally have conversations, as I say, this is the royal we, i.e. previous podcast guests, that say you need to have that future vision of the metrics that you want to surface and the decisions that you want to be able to make, and then work back from that. But often people get stuck in well, I'm only going to work with the data that I have access to right now. So, have you found that having maybe more of a view of that end goal and what you need to work to is better than just trying to, take the data you've got at the moment and throw it into a slightly different format?
No, that's a really good point, Adam. And I would, yeah, definitely I can zoom in a little bit on that one. That is, I believe, where the holistic view of a digital transformation strategy or a digital strategy comes into play, right? What happens generally is that, and you rightly pointed out, we tend to be comfortable working in the data with the data that we have. So imagine a situation that finance wants to build a predictive analytics, right? That's a big buzzword, right? Predictive analytics, that's coming. Everyone is going to go for predictive analytics. Now, imagine I build that based on the finance data that I have, right? And and by building that, I ignore all of the marketing innovation data, all of the category insights data, all of the market uplift, the sales data, right? If I ignore that, I will still create a predictive analytics based on an algorithm that will run, right? Because algorithm would not know, right, what is missing data per se, right? What's the context of the data that is missing?
Mm.
I will always have a half-baked forecast, right? Which will again be so till the time I overlay the data which is outside of finance, for example, only then I'll be able to create a robust predictive analytics forecast, right? It will be of no use without that. You need to overlay how the category is performing. You need to overlay what's the innovation plan. You need to overlay what are other factors that might impact your market uplift,
Mm.
right? You might even have to input some of the data from a supply chain point of view. You might need to input data from things like macroeconomic indicators. So you very rightly pointed out that working in that one silo of data is not never helps with ensuring that the technology, we are unlocking the real benefit of the technology. And that's where a bit of a concept around data lakes come into play, right? Where organizations are now moving from those typical rigid data warehouse structures to a much more flexible data lake houses, which has data flowing in from ERP systems, from uh, marketing systems, from market share data, and a lot of other data, like even uh, unstructured data coming in from things like social media, Facebook, Instagram. So a lot of data comes into those data lake houses, and then from there you apply a layer of your AI and machine learning algorithms. Where we lack generally, or what we sometimes do, organizations do, is that they just do it based on the data that they have, right? That you just mentioned. So finance generally, look at their data like, okay, I have that 20 years of information available, so maybe I can put some algorithm on top of it, and then what what pretty much that algorithm will only do a bit of a time series analysis, right? And based on that, it will say, okay, this was the trend last year. This is the trend. This was the trend over last 10 years. This is the trend which is going to be next for next 3-4 years. So it will not add a lot of value in my view.
Mm. No, it's really good, and again, comes back to, part of your intro, which was, your work as a business partner, and not, it made me giggle like, because I looked at one of your LinkedIn posts relating to what you just said, digital transformation and functional silos are sworn enemies of each other. It's dead right,
Yeah.
right? So as soon as you start getting into that strategic partnering side of things, it's, as you mentioned quite rightly there, it's, we're not just talking about finance data anymore. It's non-finance data. we need to start bringing into these models. And pretty soon, with the advent of, sustainability, ESG, and all of these sorts of things as well, that's just
Exactly.
going
Yeah.
to become more and more important, and it's going to be finance that are leading that. Technically, it's not just finance's responsibility to ensure that a company is running sustainably, right? But it comes back to your point
Mm.
at the very beginning, is that anything that's data driven tends to be pushed towards finance, rightly or wrongly. Yeah. So I think that's fair, and some really good insight from you there. You also spoke on LinkedIn recently about how people are sometimes swept into digital transformation too quickly. Maybe because it's still a bit of a buzz phrase. Everybody wants to transform digitally, especially with the advent of new AI technology. So I'm wondering whether you can talk a little bit more about what you meant there by, maybe people needing to put the brakes on a little bit before they go headfirst into a digital transformation project. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, you might be able to relate based on your other podcast. Also, what happens generally when we talk about automation, or we talk about digitization, uh, what we call a shiny tool syndrome, right? Someone in the organization gets a demo of a great tool, which is a cutting edge tool, and which is the one of the which promises a lot of return. That happens, and then somehow we want to get that tool right away, and we want to make sure that that gets implemented, and we start extracting value out of it. Now, what happens in that scenario is that the tool gets implemented, only to realize after some time, maybe a year's time, or whatever, depending upon the tool, that originally the tool, or originally our processes, were not designed in a way to cater for that tool. Our data was not structured in that. We did not have that level of data governance or data management in order to cater for that. What that results in what we call tailoring the solution, right? So we start tailoring the solution to uh, make it savvy for our processes. And so, for example, if we have a complexity in our process, we try to we try to tailor the tool in a way that it can help us, still with the same complexity still remaining there. That tool can help us, still deliver results. So what happens in that scenario is that the complexity results in then the tool becomes, or those tools or those technologies become bit of uh, part of a legacy spaghetti that we sometimes call. They just remain there. We look at that and we say, oh yeah, we have a tool which we go for. But many a time, these kind of scenarios I have seen with some of the a more general case studies that I have read through, in which these kind of scenarios have happened. So, and when I say go far, do not go all in, or do not go fast in that one. I don't take me wrong that, at the end of the day, the digital transformation is all about agility, right? So we have to move fast, definitely need to move fast. However, the way we need to, it's more about how do we approach digital transformation. So definitely go for first mover advantage, try on new products, right? Try on different technologies, but then make sure that technology is largely within the scope of the strategy that we have, right? So overall strategy that a business is carrying around the digital transformation, or the finance transformation for that matter, that tool sits somewhere in there. Go for small pilot projects to create excitement, to get the funding from the executives, to demonstrate the results, and to demonstrate the power that these technologies can unlock, and then move fast on those pilots, right? Do not let those pilot projects burn in purgatory, which is quite a common phenomena as well, right? A lot of pilots get into the pilot project, get into the pilot purgatory, and remains as a pilot project. So move from pilot to full scale. That's where your agility and your buy-in from your senior stakeholders, and buy-in from a broader organization comes into play, right? So everyone from top down and cross-functionally should be aligned and should be motivated and excited to go ahead with that technology. So that's
I,
what I meant by
pilot purgatory is amazing. I'm gonna steal that one. It's not, funnily enough, it's not terminology that I've heard before. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, another term is proof of concept, right? Proof of concept.
yeah. And
Proof
the
of
term can
concept.
be proof of concept. It comes in and then it just stays there.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, and what I'm seeing generally now with the advent of tools that have more out of the box, it does enable you to do more with a trial, for example. And I'm talking about
Hmm.
I'm not talking about changing ERP systems. That's a big
Yeah,
project.
yeah, yeah.
But with the stuff
I'm
that
also
they do
talking about
say,
this.
you know, get the pilot done quickly, low cost, prove the concept, and then have those conversations. But going back to your point earlier, sometimes you do need to slow down before you can speed up. And it comes down to that, right? Well, we've had the phrase on the podcast before, whether it was Einstein or whoever, you give me a problem and I'll spend, 95% of the time thinking about the problem and 5% of the time solving the problem, because I know that if
Yeah.
more time developing a well thought out plan to then reduce the time for implementation is a better approach than trying to
Mm.
skip that due diligence phase, trying to skip that foundational process stage and then move too quickly on the latter stages. So I think
Mm,
100%,
mm.
100% valid.
Absolutely. And just building on that, Adam, a lot of projects. In fact, there is a study that was done by a number of different consulting firms like BCG, McKinsey. I don't remember exactly who has quoted that, but it is said that around 70 to 80% of the digital transformation initiatives they actually fail.
Yeah.
Right? Organizations are not able to generate the expected outcomes. Right? And one of the biggest reason is this kind of is more around the culture of the organization, right? So I might be going bit off topic, but it's still relevant when we talk about bringing the going fast, having that trade off and having that balance between going fast, but then still going strategically, putting your 95% of your thinking there before taking into going into action, but still making sure that we are not slow, but we are also not overdoing the on in the name of agility. So absolutely, this is it's a complex multi cross-functional, a multi-dimension problem to solve, right? There is no one solution to solve a digital transformation journey or to solve the implementation of any new technologies or tech stacks for that matter. How do you do it? Or depends upon how your organization is structured. What are your operating models? How is the data flowing throughout the organization, right? What is um, the extent, what is the velocity of the data, what is the volume, what is the value, those typical matrices that we measure. So it's very important that we are taking those things into consideration before just moving ahead with any tool, any next tool available in the market.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, very valid. And yeah, just coming back to your point there about, these things being considered and depending on your operating model, depends on the sorts of decisions that you make and so on and so forth is, a lot of these projects now cross over multiple departments as we've been speaking about, it's especially for smaller businesses now. I know you work for a massive organization, but you've probably got lots of mini organizations within a massive organization. So you are still able to maintain that agility, right? But implementing solutions in a silo now just doesn't work anymore, and I think people embark on these projects thinking, oh yeah, I'll take the lead, I've got a bit of time, yeah, I'll sort it, it's not going to be an issue, but then they get, further down the line and then they find out, right, well, actually it's not a 2-week project, it's a
Mm.
6-month project. And it's oh no, you're going to need this expertise and you're going to need this resource. And it's, oh, so I can't just do it myself. Do you see what I mean? And it's at that point that you're then into winning the hearts and minds of your peers, because you've then
Mm.
got everybody else in on the journey with you. And that's when the partnership comes in, and your ability to create impact, because, you don't want to be in that position where you feel like you're trying to drive change and you're the only one that has something to say. There is that influence piece that needs to come in to say, look,
Mm.
guys, we need to wake up here. This is a priority project. Let's sort it. So huge amount of variables, never an easy job. But hopefully it's like we always say, you've got the right people moving in the right direction, and these things have a way of working themselves out, I guess.
Yeah, and that's where the concept of what we call the shared responsibility comes into play, right? So when the organization treats the digital transformation as a shared responsibility and not just a responsibility for, say, for example, IT function, right? Or say, for example, data function, right? But it's the shared responsibility across the organization. So there are a number of case studies that I came across: Nike, Burberry. They are really great examples around how they transform their customer experiences to, like, I mean, in a holistic way, bringing all how they transform the way the customer were engaging with their products physically and how they were doing it digitally. So the experience that they created there are a lot of good learnings to be taken from there. So I would encourage the people listening to actually go out and search a bit of those case studies as well, to get further insights into this.
Yeah, and it helps tell that story, doesn't it? It makes it a bit more real when you can see that other, and of course some organizations do have pretty big budgets to go through these transformation projects, right?
Yeah, of course.
But there's always a way of achieving similar results at a lesser scale. I always say, so you should still be able to transform your business irrespective of your size. Is
Exactly.
I always say.
Yeah.
I saw, and again, it's another big company example recently, but I was at an event yesterday, and one of my colleagues was saying to me, yeah, hearing some really interesting things in more of the sales and marketing space, and it detracts from our finance conversation a little bit. But if you imagine like a car manufacturer, like luxury car brand or whatever, where you're wanting to make that buying process more immersive, it might be that you end up in a car showroom, or maybe you don't even go to the showroom, right? You just sit in your living room at home, right? Um, if you can't see a car that's the spec that you want, so there's not one in the showroom with red leather seats, or the Bang& Olufsen sound system, or whatever it happens to be. You can either in the showroom or at home put on your VR headset and build that spec that says, right, okay,
True.
so let's put that in, and you can sit in the car with the spec that you want, right? And the
Yeah.
car analogy is done to death. Obviously, they've been, I think it was Mercedes that first started doing the sort of virtual showroom where you could kind of do the model and that sort of stuff. But it's nice to see, but we've also got to temper that with what is realistic over what is just
Yeah.
pie in the sky stuff, because it's
True.
great, but you've always got to look. So that obviously could mean a tremendous amount of value for that organization, right? But it'd be pointless other organizations trying to emulate that model unless they can flex that to say, right, well, that's a really good idea. Could we do something similar, but in a slightly different format to our business model? Yeah.
Exactly, Adam, and that's where my earlier point that I was mentioning around looking at your specific scenario, your operating models, how data is flowing through, and digital transformation or technology is not just for big organizations, right? Today, it was true, I would say 20 years ago, 25 years ago, but today the amount of cheap, I would say rather cheap processing power that we have available in the form of cloud computing and in the form of SaaS models, it's actually not just big organization thing anymore, right? Smaller organization. And again, you don't have to go all in. All you need to do is to make sure that you have a strategy, you know what your goals are, what is your logic for success through the digital transformation, why do you want to do it, what are those business problems that you are trying to solve. Then you take those steps, small steps, and start building those tech stacks. Now, this technological capability that you build, you need to build over time in a way that you can also, today the technology is available where you can actually scale it as you grow, right? And all you need to do is make sure that your three different technologies that you are taking or three different tools, they integrate with each other properly through APIs and through other means. So it's all about how you approach, right? If you again go for just the next available tool in the market and start applying it into the organization, big or small, that will be a hit or a miss, right? Because you never know if that's gonna actually deliver the value that you want to generate from that.
Yeah. And it's a valid point on the integrations as well. But unfortunately now with the advent of new technologies, it is becoming easier to do that piece
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there are more native cloud solutions. And I think Zapier are also talking about leveraging ChatGPT like technology for people to be able to say to Zapier, I'm using these systems, tell me how I need to map the fields, and then obviously the model goes away and comes back and says, these are your mappings, this is what you need to, and so on and so forth. So that's still kind of early stages stuff, but we'll get there. The only thing that I will say, and it sounds like you've got this sorted anyway, is coming back to those goals and what you want to actually achieve. It's great to put a strategy in place and build a list of 20 different tools that could add value in certain areas. But you just need to be very careful that you don't end up with like a patchwork quilt of all of these different applications, because you
yeah,
often find that some problems don't need solving from technology, and you can end up,
yeah,
over engineering something. But likewise, coming back to the point earlier about wanting to actually know as opposed to just rely on marketing collateral over what the utility is of a tool. I think people need to be mindful of that as well, because as I say, there is some pretty good marketing out there now and pretty,
mm,
you know,
yeah.
you
There is, there
into
is,
these tools without realizing it, right?
yeah. And that's the problem, right? You end up probably getting too many tools that you need. It's like buying too many clothes and then have nothing to wear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And that's what I always recommend is, and I go through this process, personally and as a business is, a bit of an audit in the same way that you'd audit your supplier spend, audit your tech spend, are any of the applications we're using already developing in areas that can replace another tool, for example, because the pace of technology now is so fast, you might find that you're now using two tools where one could actually serve both
Yeah,
purposes. You just didn't know because when you procured
exactly.
it at the time, that capability wasn't there. So my recommendation
Mhm.
is always speak to the supplier of that system, and talk to them about, the way that you're working, because you may find that you can cut 5 down to 3, three down to 2, but it's until you have that review and have those conversations that you know which way to go, really.
Yeah, and Adam, this reminds me a quote from Bill Gates actually. So he once said that the first step or the early phases of any digital transformation journey. I mean, I don't remember the exact word, but the meaning was that the earlier phases of any digital transformation journey is to simplify your processes, remove the complexity, and automate your workflows. Only then you should go for machine learning. If you haven't done those, do not go for machine learning, right? And that's what the problem comes into play, or that's what we need to be very aware of. Is that first of all, if I were to start a transformation, first of all, I would look at the processes, right? What are those processes that I really need to? And you rightly pointed out, not everything needs a technological solution. Not everything is a tech solution. There might just be a matter of simplifying your core process first, right? Which will eliminate number of steps which you were actually perceiving earlier to that it will be replaced by technology, but they were probably not needed at all, right? So you streamline, you demystify your complex processes first, and then you look at your operating models in parallel. You look at your operating models and other workflows and see what you can automate, what you can digitize, where you can apply machine learning, what are the areas that you can then just see it makes sense to keep them manual for the moment,
Mhm.
right? And maybe in the longer term have a plan to somehow them to the technology as well. So yeah, this is how we need to approach this, and rather than just going for the tool or going for a technology and just looking technology as a magic pill for all the ailments. I think that's also not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. And just using the example there of, maybe keeping some things manual, knowing that it's probably not going to be manual forever, right? But at the moment it's
Yeah.
a big enough problem to solve, right? An example there, and it comes back to the Power BI point, right? It's not just in terms of level of problem to solve, but it also relates to that learning piece as well. So if, again, using Power BI as an example, now with the AI in Power BI, you can put your data in and you can click a button that says automatically create me a dashboard. It'll go away and it'll look at the variables and it'll say, oh, that sort of data could fit, a pie chart, or this is best in a matrix, or whatever it happens to be. And it'll put everything together, and it's great, right? It's a time saving exercise. It's fabulous. And you can get some really quick wins. But if you're new to data visualization, there's often an argument to say, right, well, don't go to the fully automated approach first. Build a simple dashboard from scratch, because then you understand the foundation. You understand the fundamental elements of building a data visualization, right? And then use the AI later, because you've got that grounding. Coming back to what we were saying about coding and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
Sometimes you've got to do the stuff manually to build that baseline and that expertise to be able to automate later on.
Yeah.
I think,
As they say, sometimes you need to take a step back in order to move in the right
yeah,
direction.
yeah,
Right. So
100%. So I've got two more questions, because I appreciate it's late for you. It's coming, it's
mhm.
the clock for your time, isn't it, Tarek? And you probably want to finish for the day. So two questions. One is the one that you've probably seen that I ask at the end of all shows. So I don't know whether you've had a think about that or not. But no, the penultimate question is, for people that are maybe 4 or 5 years behind where you are, um, and looking at the state of technology, they know, they need to get more into data, because, as you say, data is the new oil, and so on and so forth. How would you recommend that they approach, taking on projects, upskilling, maybe taking into account some of the not necessarily mistakes, but some of the hurdles that you've experienced in the past? What sort of recommendations would you make?
Yeah, Adam, I would the one line that I would always say is that be ruthless. And when I say be ruthless about your development.
Okay.
Right. You need to invest in yourself. That is the only way to stay relevant. First of all, do not hesitate to unlearn what you have learned so far, right? And learn a new skill. Secondly, there is no shame in acknowledging the lack of knowledge, right? So be open about it. Be very curious, right? And commit yourself to a plan on upskilling yourself. That's the baseline, right? You need to make sure that you are aware of those technologies. You are aware. You don't need to do you you don't need to do coding, or don't need to become a data scientist. I mean, if you want to become, you can. It's a very lucrative field, I would say. But get a basic understanding. With internet, so many resources are available out there right now. Free resources, in the form of YouTube. You can go to the code camp. You can go to things like free Power BI. Microsoft offers free Power BI trainings and all those sort of things. But have a plan in place. First of all, think about what you want to achieve, right? Do you want to move more towards a digital transformation strategy space, or do you want to move more towards the data analytics or data science space, right? So that will, because that will determine where which way do you want to go, what different resources you are going to tap in order for you to build that way. Now, whichever area that you choose, commit a time to it, right? I make sure that on Saturday mornings I have some time block for myself where I upskill myself, right? Every single Saturday morning I do that, right? This is one of the most important thing for me to develop myself in my career, and be and anyways, otherwise be a bit more informed person as well. Secondly, be a little bit tool agnostic. Yes, learn a tool, right? Learn, for example, if you want to learn Power BI, go for it. If you want to learn some other ClickSense or some other tools, go for it. Of course, you will need some tool in order for you to learn around a bit of a data visualization and those sort of areas. But be open, right? Tools come and go, right? I mean, one tool is applicable today. It might not be there. So build your basic knowledge, right? Now, the basic knowledge comes into play around how do you tool, by its very definition, is there just to help you do some stuff, right? The real power comes in when you are able to tell the story behind the data, right? So work on your data storytelling skills, right? Make sure that you tell the right story to the right people at the right time, right? You can learn as many tools as you want. You can learn to code. You can become a data scientist, or you can become any programmer or developer. But if we cannot explain, right, the point that we want to make, the decision that we want to make, and how do we influence people to make those decisions, it will not be of much use. So my advice will be to always be curious, commit yourselves, invest in time. uh, if you want to really go beyond that, you can invest some money also, and go for a little bit uh, more structured training courses also. But again, if that's not your thing, you can still find number of free resources out there. So I over past 3 years, that's the kind of a habit that I developed, right? To upskill myself and keep learning new things and be on top of things from. So for example, the professional bodies I am a member of, they have really good resources available on a data science, data analytics, data visualizations, and those sort of things. So I keep on tapping into those. So keep yourself abridged with those resources. Tap into those resources. Um, if 5 years ago, uh, in fact, when I started doing that's where I would say that was a turning point for me when I started doing this data science. I actually started doing the data science certification. I stopped doing it for around a year and then I started again.
Okay.
Right. And now if when I look in retrospect, I'm like, I should have probably started 2 years before that. 1 year I just spent in planning, right? Oh, okay, I'll do something, and I will go on the internet and I'll look at 3 different courses and I'll be like, this looks too good. Oh no, this doesn't look good. This is too expensive. And I spent a year on that. So in retrospect, if I look at that, uh, I would have started even earlier. So to all the listeners who are actually really passionate about this thing, and again, we as a finance, I do believe that we don't have a choice but to be passionate about technology, because it is going to come, right? One way or the other, whether we like it or not, whether we avoid, it is going to come. Technology is coming, right? How do we embrace it? How do we make it as part of our daily routine? And how do we actually extract the value? How do we actually unlock the technology to be a better strategic business partners, to be the navigators of the business, right? Rather than just doing our day to day routine and doing complex, doing bit of a routine work and transaction work and complex work. So we move on to a bit more of business partnering part. So that will be my advice.
That's amazing, Tarek, and there's so much there. But I guess, I mean, just to summarize a little bit, I think it's fair, first have a goal, and make sure you're passionate about it, because it's one thing to upskill because you think that is a good idea and because everybody else is doing, but to come back to your previous point, are you passionate enough to follow through? So I think that's a really valid point.
Mm.
Second piece on the using the infinitely available free resources, I think is good as well, right? And yeah, I think it's a reminder for anybody that is a chartered accountant or has some sort of certification to go to their governing bodies and look at the resources and look at those sections, because there's probably a load of stuff there that they've not looked at in a while that's
Yeah.
probably there and ready to use, right? And then on the tools piece, I totally agree that it's better to be a business intelligence data visualizer expert in a broader sense than it is to be a data visualization Power BI only expert, for example, because you don't want to limit yourself there. But you're dead right in saying that behind the tool, there is always that end goal, which is how do we communicate the story? So how do we inform people as best as possible? Because then that's going to stack the odds in our favor when it comes to the business partnering and the creating impacts in the organization. Fabulous. And then the last piece that I'll say is it comes back to your time about ring fencing time on a Saturday morning. I think people very quickly get swept into the dirge of the day to day. Right? So especially if they work from home, so they shove some breakfast in their face and then think, oh, I've got all of this stuff to do, it's coming up to month's end and I've got so much to prep for. So they're into work, and then 5:00 they think, what happened there? Where did my day go? But in just coming back to our point about taking a step back, find time for you first. Yeah. So as opposed to putting yourself second after work, put yourself first. Yeah. Because to remain relevant, as you say, you are going to need to develop those skills, and you're not going to be able to develop those skills if you're absolutely exhausted and didn't find time during the day. It's the same with investing money, right? The number one recommendation in investing money is that you pay yourself into your savings first when you get paid, rather than waiting to see what's left in the bank at the end of the month, because it's probably not likely you're going to have much left in the bank, especially now with cost of living, right? So ring fence that first, prioritize yourself first. And that's something that I'll really emphasize. So thanks for touching on that as well. And so we'll let you go, Tarek, but the last question is, we've talked about some tools on the podcast, but for you, and it could be professionally, it could be personally as well, is there an app on your phone, a gadget, another piece of software that you use all the time that you just couldn't live without?
Yeah, great, great question, Adam. Yeah, I would say the app that I use most these days is Notion.
With another Notion.
So I cannot live without it. Honestly, all my to-dos, all my reading list, my upskilling education piece, all the research that I do on in my free time, everything is on Notion, right? Notion owns me.
Yeah. And it's the same with
So
me.
if something happens to it, I am doomed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it. And it's the same. I often refer to Notion as my second brain because everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And I always tell the story, going back to our point about condensing multiple systems into one, is that I used to run Trello, I used to run OneNote, I used to run Evernote, all that sort of stuff. And then I moved on to Notion, and I had one area that was my Kanban to do, and then another area for all of my other notes. But everything goes in there. Literally, I pull out links to my emails and drop my emails in there so I can prioritize.
Exactly.
Really, everything from an organization point of view goes in there. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, Tarek. Love the fact I've got a Notion plan. I will definitely be sending you links to Notion templates.
Absolutely. That'll be great.
People are building businesses off the back of Notion templates. So
of course, yeah,
a bit money in it. So I hear, but no, we'll let you go, Tarek. Really appreciate that. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And I really hope you have a good evening.
No, thank you so much, Adam. Thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Cheers, Tarek.
Cheers.